Hello everybody, this is some random Neko, waking up from her nap to greet the world for the day. And by greet, I mean show up over a month late to the 2.5 patch for Wuthering Waves, where the main story quest sent the community into a spirited and nonsensical frenzy on a scale I haven't seen since Captain America's Civil War. So for this video, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the Phrolova vs Rover conflict that gave birth to what I believe to be a stupid debate, but welcome discourse that proves how good the writers over at Kuro Games are at creating compelling characters that are able to make players fight each other the way they did during this patch. But before I begin, a quick disclaimer. This is purely an opinion piece with no heavy research or deep dive involved. Everything's coming from my memory and online searches for fact-checking purposes, so if I get something wrong, feel free to correct me as politely and civilly as possible in the comment section down below. Now with that out of the way, let's begin with a brief overview of the Rover vs Phrolova debate. In the 2.5 patch, the main quest has a search for the gem containing Leviathan's residual power, while we also get to learn about Phrolova's past and reveal the connection she shares with Rover from before. This is the first time players got a playable villain and could learn about them in depth, so it wasn't surprising that a discourse would arise considering we've only ever seen the pxidawn commit terrible acts without truly knowing why. What was surprising was how quickly it turned into a clash of opinions that grew into an overly heated debate. As for where the clash comes from, a massive oversimplification of it would be, Hero broke a promise to traumatize Pretty Girl, thus pushing her onto the path of villainy and making players feel sorry for her as a result. Which, jokes aside, does seem to be why a concerning amount of players hate Rover now, because, oh no, Pretty Villainess got her heart broken by the hero. Rover needs to repent and apologize for their terrible actions. Except no, they actually don't. But more on that later. As for the non-oversimplified explanation, the debate stems from the promise Phrolova accuses Rover of breaking, further repercussions from Rover erasing their memories, the motivations that drive Phrolova and Rover to commit the actions that they do, and the morality behind their respective methodologies. And that's why I find the debate between Phrolova and Rover to be stupid, because given these topics, it shouldn't even be a debate, but an in-depth discussion on the tragedy of Phrolova and how actions always have consequences, as even the ones we deem insignificant can have a bigger impact on someone than we expect. Unfortunately, those of the community that are content to just discuss are drowned out by the wave of people who'd rather argue about who's right and who's wrong, who's a hypocrite and who's not, whose actions are justified and whose are not. And if that's the direction we want to go, then fine, I'll throw my hat into the ring as well. First off, let's talk about the promise that has so many players jumping down Rover's throat and demanding they apologize for breaking it. During one of Phrolova's concerts post-tragedy, Rover was in attendance and figured out the hidden feelings behind the piece played, which left Phrolova feeling seen and understood after being alone with her trauma for so long. She then tells Rover she's still working on the piece, so Rover promises to come back and listen to it once it's finished no matter what, which makes Phrolova happy. Unfortunately, they never come back as this conversation occurred before their memory wipe. Thus, Phrolova becomes depressed and vulnerable enough for the pxidawn to approach with an offer to help her achieve her goal of bringing back her deceased loved ones, which she takes without hesitation. As we can see during this entire sequence, it's clear that Phrolova placed too much weight on this interaction with Rover, and so did a lot of players. This interaction wasn't even 10 minutes long, and already Phrolova believes she now had a dear friend, while Rover most likely treated it as two strangers making a genuine yet fleeting connection. Also, the promise Rover made was specifically about them coming back once Phrolova's piece was completed, which it never was. Thus, Rover technically never broke their promise. Not to mention the fact that Rover doesn't even know if what they're being shown in the Sonorosphere is true, because Phrolova admits to wanting to trap them within it, so how can we the players be 100% certain the entire interaction wasn't fabricated like Rover suspects? Also, Phrolova was introduced as a villain who led attacks on Jinzhou and then Renesita, and has given us no reason to truly trust her, yet some people actually expect Rover to do so just because she's pretty and helps save them the one time? Yeah, no. Rover's distrust and callous attitude towards her is reasonable and justified, and they don't need to apologize because they didn't break a promise that has a high chance of not being real, especially since Phrolova herself never tried to argue that it was real and just played coy instead. Second, Phrolova claims that Rover sacrificing their memories for their goals means they've fallen even further than her, the one who was A-okay with committing mass murder in order to achieve her goals. One is sacrificing themselves and doing everything they can to stop a mass extinction event, while the other is sacrificing innocence and committing numerous atrocities in order to get what she wants. I think it's quite clear who has the moral high ground here, so I'm just going to move on now. Third, Rover's not a hypocrite when they retort that Phrolova doesn't understand the value of human life. Phrolova and some players claim that Rover has no ground to stand on when talking about this because they're immortal and are always erasing their memories. thus erasing what little humanity they have, if they had any at all. But if anything, Phrolova is the hypocrite because she was human and only became immortal after the tragedy that made her half-tacit discord. So she'd be the one who's more likely to understand the value of human life, but no. Instead, she's so obsessed with bringing her lost loved ones back that she trapped their spirits in tacit discords that are locked in a loop from hell where they're constantly reliving their deaths. As for the erasing memories part, just because the memories are gone doesn't mean a person's ability to feel or think is gone too. And as a fan of Kingdom Hearts, I'm of the belief that just because the mind forgets, it doesn't mean the heart will too. Also, we still don't know why Rover erased their memories, but there has to be a pretty good reason for it because it's quite clear that it's not a decision they made lightly, nor one they would have made in the first place if their memories were really so gosh darn important. And finally, there are some players who argue that Rover treated Phrolova differently in comparison to other female characters, and didn't try to help her like they did with Shorekeeper and Cardathea, nor did they try to understand and talk to her like with Camellia, and that's why Rover failed her in the end. Except one, Phrolova's a villain, so of course Rover's going to treat her differently in comparison to the ally characters. And two, Rover did talk to her in an attempt to break her out of her obsession-turned-delusion and stop her from continuing down her current path. But it didn't matter. Rover didn't fail Phrolova because they didn't listen to her. Phrolova failed herself because she refused to listen to them. She may have been misguided by the Phrixidus, but she was fully aware she was being used, and didn't mind as long as she got what she wanted. She refused to be stopped even by someone she once held dear, and unfortunately, you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. And at the end, Rover watched her disappear not in triumph for stopping the bad guy, but with regret that things had to end the way they did, because Rover is fundamentally someone who will do what needs to be done. But if there's even a 0.001% chance of there being another way without any more sacrifices, they'll take that chance no matter what. And it's only when their hand is literally forced by someone else will the sacrifice be made. Overall, this entire debate really comes down to a matter of perspective. Phrolova's past is always shown through her perspective, so it's easy to feel sympathetic for her and dislike Rover as a result of their actions and attitude towards her. However, while it's fine to choose a side in the Phrolova versus Rover debate, I think it's disingenuous to do so without also considering Rover's side of things during the present-day sequences, as in their perspective, here's this villain who's brought nothing but death and destruction, so why should they believe anything she says? But it's still best not to pick a side at all, because I believe the entire debate is stupid and we shouldn't be putting Rover down just to lift Phrolova up. However, I also believe the community's reaction towards the 2.5 main story quest, dumb debate and all, is actually a good thing, because it shows that the game is willing to do more with their protagonist. Rover's no longer a self-insert hero for players to live vicariously through, but a complex character who has their own thoughts, feelings, and personality. It also shows that the game can create a complex villain that players are able to sympathize for, with some even ignoring the atrocities she's committed because of how well written her backstory and motivations are. Kuro games really cook with this patch, because this type of community discourse is something I haven't seen before. And that's not just because I usually avoid gacha game forums like the plague, but because the discourse isn't coming from an argument over who's the best waifu or husbando, or how terrible the new patch's content is, or which QOL or rewards we rightfully deserve, but from well-written characters sending players into a dilemma over whether they should be rooting for a sympathetic but irredeemable villain, or a hero whose flaws are finally starting to appear through their perfect persona. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Reminder that this is just my opinion and not a heavily researched senior thesis, so if there's anything wrong, please feel free to correct me in the comments section down below in a polite and civilized manner. Also, if there was something you liked or disliked about the Phrolova versus Rover debate that I didn't cover or just wanted to mention, you can do that in the comments section as well. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and comment if there's anything Wuwa related that you'd like me to talk about next. This is some random Neko going off to do my dailies now. Don't forget to keep calm and just meow.